As the second largest Ontario park, south of Algonquin, the Queen Elizabeth II Wildlands is one of the most diverse and least disturbed natural areas found in central Ontario. This relatively undisturbed area contains a handful of rugged canoe routes, traversing a variety of meandering rivers and streams, small lakes, and numerous ponds. As the majority of the interior is seldom traveled, one will find rugged portages, routes, and campsites, but will ultimately be rewarded by peace and solitude. The goal of this trip was to reach Scrabble and Clear Lakes in the heart of the park, by connecting a series of seldom used to non-existent portages. We planned on using 5 days to scout, clear, and map the route, which can now be completed in 3 to 4 days. Very few have since completed the route, and canoeists should expect to see rough and bushy portages, little used campsites, and a handful of log jams and beaver dams that require some careful liftovers. Well, here in the Queen Elizabeth II Wildlands Provincial Park, we decided that we were going to trip up into some of these areas that canoeists seldom visit. Now, these areas I'm talking about are Clear Lakes, Scrabble Lakes, Red Boat Lake, and Cranberry Lake. Now, to get into these areas, we came in through Fishhog Lake, and we made a series of small portages through some seldom used footpaths, maybe some animal trails. Regardless, we cleared the paths a little and we flagged them and put some signs up as well.
We've brought a few tools along on this trip that we don't normally take when we go canoeing, knowing that in this seldom used park there'll be some portage trails that we may have to clear or maybe even make some new ones. So we got ourselves some working gloves to protect our hands, and we brought some bright orange flagging tape. This stuff's great for marking the beginning or the ends or along the trails. And in the cases where you can't actually get through, we've got a machete, so we can cut down some limbs and dead branches that are in the way. And this one's really nice because as well as the cutting edge, it's got a sawtooth blade on the other side. Have to get through some of those bigger limbs. And for all the smaller limbs, got a pair of pruning shears here. These are great for cutting through all that small underbrush stuff. And knowing that some of the trails will need to be marked, we decided to bring along the little man with the canoe on his head, those little portage signs to mark the beginning and the end. Now, I inquired about, buying some of these, and they're pretty expensive, so I ended up just making my own. So I started looking around in my garden shed to see if I had some useful materials to use, and I came up with this old no trespassing sign. And I thought this would be perfect because, first of all, it's made out of plastic, so it's good and durable. But the neat thing about this is it's yellow on the back, which is going to stand out nicely in the woods. And because of this size, I can cut this into a whole bunch of smaller pieces and make a whole bunch of signs. So I got a ruler and a marker, and I basically just marked off the smaller segments that I'll be able to make with this sign. I can get 8 smaller signs from this one big piece. Then I had to figure out how to get the picture of the guy carrying the canoe on these little signs. So I just got a pen and paper and drew a little picture of what it would look like. Then I got my sharp knife and I cut it out, and what I ended up with is a nice little stencil here. Then I got a sharp knife and then I just cut the big piece into a whole bunch of smaller pieces. And that way I'll end up with 8 of these smaller signs once I cut them all up. So I found a tin of black spray paint in the garage, put my stencil on top of the cutout here, and we just spray it on. And then carefully lift it off. And there you go, instant portage sign.
As many of the portages within the park are seldom used, abandoned, or non-existent, careful scouting, mapping, and ground truthing are first required.
Consider taking the boat. Let's just...
Yeah, that's what I think. We can walk up, and then if we see the trailhead, we can take it from the boat.
The first step in route finding is to sift through a variety of resources and look for mention of historical trails, paths, and portages, and then to see how these match up to highly detailed satellite imagery.
Okay, so now there's the fun part of our trip. We gotta figure out where the portage trail is here. We're gonna try to get into Red Boat Lake for today, and I've marked down a few areas where there's a snowmobile trail, but looking around here, I don't see any snowmobile trails, so It's going to be a bit bushwhacking and trying to find a way over these cliffs and hills before we find a snowmobile trail that apparently exists.
We would soon find out that many of the old trails ceased to exist or were simply too overgrown to properly locate from our satellite maps. Ground truthing by searching the bush with the aid of the maps helped to establish the best routes or locate faint historic trails. Once the trails had been properly scouted, the next obvious step was to clear the path of obstructions such as downed trees, small saplings, and any undergrowth that may make the path impossible to follow once the summer growth has emerged. Springtime is one of the easiest times of the year to find and clear trails, as minimal brush makes it easier to scout and clear. It is important to keep in mind that come summer, the area may become quite dense with growth, and the portages may be harder to follow. We then flagged and signed the cleared trail before eventually proceeding with our canoe.
To get through here, we had a lot of small ponds to hop over, some little streams. Some of them get kind of narrow, but it looks like beaver activity will keep the water levels up. The only time we did have some issue was getting right into here in Clear Lake. We opted to take a small little stream, but the alders quickly enclosed in on us and the water levels soon disappeared. All right, now as you can see, we found ourselves in a bit of an alder swamp here. We're just going between Scrabble and Clear Lakes right now. There's just one beaver dam. It kind of gets through to this small channel, but it seems to be there's enough water for the canoe. It's just kind of tight with all these alders around here. Maybe we got right this time.
And when all the hardships of route finding subsided, we were able to truly take in the rugged beauty of the park.